America and to the republic for which it stands. Good afternoon. Beautiful, sunshiny, crispy spring day in Winona. We've called this special session meeting to address the Army Corps of Engineers plans for the dredge materials in Pool 6. And we will start with our public hearing portion of the meeting.
Well, we should start with approving the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Technicalities.
Yeah.
And with that, I'm wondering, does it make sense to have the Army Corps give their presentation first so that the public can hear it in case they want to comment on what they hear? Otherwise, they're not really going to be able to respond to what they hear.
Does make more sense and sort of follows the format that we use.
But I would,
Yeah, we could do that
Is there
as
a
long
reason
as.
not to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Well,
just wanted to make sure
there was
that
a
it was.
reason.
It was
There was.
The discussion
There
is
is.
contained to the board and the Army Corps.
Okay. Oh,
But you can do that as long as when it comes to the,
It's not an open floor for the public.
It's not an open floor for the, for a
Right.
dialogue between them and the open Corps, or in the Corps. So switching it won't matter as long as you stick to that
but the
format.
public does not have to leave for the Corps' presentation.
Oh, God, no.
no. They don't have to leave, just they didn't want to create a contentious dialogue between citizens.
Well,
and-
sometimes, things bring up things and you want to ask questions, and
Okay,
really that's reserved for the board.
all right. So do we have a
So I'll make a
motion to
motion.
amend?
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda by changing 3.1 and 3.2.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacobs, seconded by Commissioner Olson, to amend the agenda to move the presentation of the U.S. Corps of Engineers to 3.1 and move the public hearing till after the presentation. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, approved. So, public, sit tight. Corps, you're on. All right, and thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having us here. Yes, you can.
But you didn't come all the way from Mississippi, did you?
No, we didn't.
No.
So we're working over at Fountain City, so
Okay,
not too far to go.
all right.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here, guys. We've worked with different county members I have for over the years on different projects and stuff, and I know there's been a lot of great use from the county from our material over the years at multiple locations that we've got, and I think we all agree that the river here offers us a lot of benefits, recreational boating, sightseeing, economic importance to the city, county, and the state, nation. And we can't afford to have it shut down. I mean, it provides jobs for the area, saves farmers about $1 a bushel for their grain that's moved. It lowers price basically on anything that we consume every day. It gets trucks off the highway, so it's very vitally important to the economy. Management's always been difficult, and it's always been a concern. We're very fortunate that the material that we do dredge is a clean material that we can use beneficially for a lot of different uses. And like I said, the city, the Port Authority, county, different landowners, construction offices or construction outfits, they all use that material. And we've used quite a bit in this area. And Paul will go into some background here and explain the current plan that is currently out for public comment. We're hoping to ease maybe some of the concerns that are out there and extend an opportunity to work, keep working with the county, continue partnering with the county. And we need to make sure one thing is clear, though, that this document that's out there is pre-decisional. So it's not, nothing's been decided yet. When we're going through the process to gather comments from everybody, and that's the whole point of the public comment period. Our goal is to try to get a win-win, but that's, it's not an easy task always. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul, and like I say, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
All right, thanks, Steve. Chairperson Ward and Commission, thanks for having us here today. I'll go through a presentation. I like to move around a lot, but I'll try to be contained here so you can hear me and I can see my notes. So next slide. So as Steve has mentioned, we'll talk quickly about the Corps navigation mission. The draft plan that Steve has mentioned is pre-decisional. Nothing's been decided yet. This is just a draft of what we think a way to move forward. We'll talk about some management opportunities in the future and then open it up for questions and answers with the board here. So next slide. So Our Corps of Engineers mission by Congress is to provide a safe, reliable, efficient navigation channel for the movement of commerce on the 9-foot channel. Again, we need to do that responsibly. We need to be good stewards of the resources, including taxpayer dollars when we're doing this. So when we try to find a solution, we try to do it as least costly as possible with the least impact on the environment as possible. Keep that all in mind as we're moving through this process. That's kind of an overarching way of how we need to do our planning process. Again, as Steve mentioned, while moving materials on the river saves money. It saves about $1 per bushel of corn that is moved out of this area as compared to trains and trucks. So it's a cost-effective way to move material up and down the river, and it's savings for those close by and far away. It's an economic way to move material. Materials that are moved up so what comes north is our fertilizer, salt that we use for our winter road, and we also bring in coal, obviously for the coal plants in the area. What do we move south out of here? Obviously, we move our corn, soybeans, and our distillers grains that are produced in this area and move south. So it's an exchange of commodities. Come north, we ship our stuff south. So it's constant back and forth. And again, the dollar per bushel really is a competitive way for our folks to manage and to move the product. So next slide, Steve. So what we have here is a comparison of moving commodities by barge or by train or by truck. So upper left-hand corner, you see a 15-barge tow. That 15-barge tow can carry the same amount of quantity as 216 rail cars plus 6 engines, or over 1,000 semi-trucks. Just look at that real quick. You do one 15-barge tow you see going past downtown Winona, you take about 1,000 trucks off the road, and you reduce 216 rail cars going by. So it's another way of move the commodities in this area. As you move to the middle of the screen here, you talk about the carbon footprint of that. Moving the same amount of cargo in that distance, the barge in the lower left here, that's the emissions from the barge versus the train in the middle versus the truck's way to the right. You can just see the emission footprint is across the board. It's much more friendly to move it via barge when it's a possibility. And then way over to the right, you talk about the fuel usage. One gallon of fuel can move about 616 miles via barge, 478 miles with a train, or 150 miles with a truck. So it just kind of shows a comparison across the board of what's the importance, why the navigation system is here. That was recognized back in the late 1800s that there needed to be another way to compete with the railroads and other ways to get products to the international markets from the upper Midwest. Next slide, Steve. So where do we dredge and why in Pool 6? The dark blue line through the middle is a navigation channel. That is what we're here to maintain. The red rectangles throughout there shows the areas where we dredge historically through time. Why do we dredge there? I like to use the analogy of a glass of lemonade. You got your ice, you got your sugar, and you got your lemon in there. You stir it all up. Everything's moving. It's beautiful. Glass of lemonade tastes right. You let it sit there for a while. What happens? Things start dropping out because the energy is stopped. So that's kind of what's happening here. As you can see, just south on the south side of Winona, the river gets a little bit wider there. Some of the energy is leaving the main channel of the river. It widens out. The energy goes out with it. The sand drops out of the water column. That's what's happening for the most part throughout Pool 6 and elsewhere throughout the district. As the river gets wider in places, that's where we need to dredge. So that's why we're dredging in those areas in red, is for the most part where the river is losing energy. Next slide, Steve. So historic dredging in Pool 6. So since about 1985 or so, we go back that far. Actually, we go much lower than that, but if you look at the chart here, it's showing that the historic average is about 25,000 cubic yards to maintain the main channel of Pool 6. Unfortunately, as you see, as we get closer to where we're at these days in 2010 up to 2015, our dredging quantity has nearly doubled. And why is that? Well, it has a lot to do with the precipitation. It has everything to do with the precipitation there. A lot more snow, a lot more rain. As we know from living here, last 5 winters, the river level has not gotten anywhere near to normal, even in the wintertime. So there's a lot more water in the system. Steve, next slide here, it shows, this is the hydrograph, basically just shows the amount of water that's coming through the river past the Winona Gauge downtown. Those dots represent, the annual average, but you see that dark black line that's just showing it's trending going up. There's more water in the system than there's ever been. And with this water comes the sediment that then drops out within the river channel, so we need to dredge that out. So Our challenge is increasing with, again, we used to about 25,000 yards on average, now we're up to about 62,500, so about doubled. Next slide. So how much material does that mean? So since 1981, we've dredged 925,000, let's just call it 1 million cubic yards of sand. But what does that mean? Well, you could go down to Bob Welch Aquatic Center and fill that pool 300 times with sand. That's about what 1 million cubic yards is. Is there any football fans in the area? You could fill Bank One Stadium, or you could fill Lambeau Field with about 1 million cubic yards of sand. So that gives you an idea of what that means. Now, to bring it home, what does that mean in your house? Your washer or dryer, that's about the size of a cubic yard of sand. So think about that when you're talking about these quantities of sand that we're dealing with here. So that's what we're trying to find a home for, is managing this much sand. Now, again, since 1981, we've dredged nearly 1 million cubic yards in Pool 6. Next slide, Steve. Where has it all gone? It has been used within the community of Winona and the surrounding communities. Just looking at a few of the examples, 2012, the Windcraft put up a new facility over by Winona Canoe, over by Hal Leonard, used some of the material to flatten out that area. Fleet Farm, back in 1984, 300,000 yards of sand went towards that. Middle school, sand is used to level that area. You go down the list, RTP warehouse, the County Highway 43 bridge downtown, material into that. We built this island over by the Black Horse. That poor island hasn't had a chance. It got overtopped every year. And we're gonna keep trying to get her back in there, but she's had a rough start to her life, but we're gonna try and keep Mosquito Island going there. But then obviously some residential development. So the new residential area right across the street from the hospital, that's built on red sand that came out of specifically out of Homer. So that material is brought down there for that use. Winter road maintenance. Again, we'll mix it with the salt that was brought up on the barges, and we put it out on the roads this time of year during the snow events. And there's other construction projects in the area, the athletic fields and courts throughout the community. There's dredge sand there. I play volleyball at the Black Horse. I guarantee you that's dredge sand because there's zebra mussels in it, and yeah, so it's not the cleanest, but as far as playing volleyball on, but it is dredge sand, and it works good for that. General fill, and my kids grew up playing in the sandboxes, so dredge sand. So I know a lot of other folks in the community has done the same. So it's been used in the community. It's not like it just goes away. We use it for projects within our community here. So next slide, Steve. So I want to talk a little bit in detail on this slide here. So again, as you see, historic dredging, the average was 25,000. Again, we're up to about 62,500. So the team was considering how we want to manage this material moving forward for the next 20 years. Our plan covers about a 20-year span. So one idea we looked at, as we do in other pools, we looked at, well, how much space would we need to accommodate nearly 1.3 million cubic yards of sand in this area? Well, if you pile it up 15 feet high, you'll need about 50 acres to manage 1.3 million cubic yards of sand. If we're not going to do anything with it, we're just going to stack it up somewhere. We need 50 acres, 15 feet high, to accommodate the 1.3 million cubic yards we're going to generate over the next 20 years. Like, okay, that's kind of extreme. What else could we do there? Well, how has material been managed in Pool 6 since the early 80s? Well, again, as we showed you on the previous slide, it's gone to beneficial use. So why don't we look at where we're currently managing it and what more room may we need a little bit to manage what we're going to dredge in any given year. So what we've done is we said, okay, what's the worst dredging season we've had? Well, we just had it in 2019. We dredged about 120,000 cubic yards. So what we said, okay, 120,000 plus a contingency, because it's probably going to happen again. Let's give us a little wiggle room. We decided, let's see if we can find a home for 168,000 cubic yards, call it 170. How much land will that need? About 12 acres. Not even a half of what the whole plan over 20 years, 1.3 million acres would need. So, like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. No one wants a big, huge pile that big, and I don't know of any 50-acre parcels anywhere near Winona that's available for use. And we'll get into the cost of getting it there later on. But
How close is close?
we'll get to that.
Okay.
We have a chart that shows the cost difference here of getting it to different places. So,
Okay.
So let's look at moving, let's see if we can manage 12 acres to manage the 168,000 cubic yards. Like, okay, that seems like a much less impact to the community. So next slide, Steve. So again, we assessed where we were going with the sand. Obviously, we've got Winona Harbor site downtown on Latch Island. We've got an agreement with the city through next December. So December of 21, we've got an agreement to continue to use that property. We've been using that place since 1989. And we've moved where'd my number go? Since there, we've moved about 125,000 yards. It's gone to the city. The city used it, you know, there's a little pile there now, but 125,000 since '89 has been put there and removed and used for the city's benefit. So we'll continue to use that site, and then we've got our Homer West site, which we acquired it in 2018. Mr. Hemker, rest in peace, he passed away. But prior to that, he had his property for sale. We have been working with him since 1986. We'd bring our material to that site since 1986, which is about, and over that time span, we've placed about 300,000 cubic yards of sand at our Homer West site. That material, there's a pile there now.
How big of a site is that you technically?
About 3 acres is what
About
we're using.
okay,
The
3
current
acres.
impact right there is about 3 acres. What we've acquired is nearly 4. So there's more room on that site, but we're not going to do any expansions until we know for sure which way we're going with this. Again, the Homer West site, about 300,000 yards has gone through there again. At times it's been empty, but at times there's been a pile of sand there. Now, up until we acquired it, Mr. Hemker and his family, they were managing the sand. They had the resources to sell it to whoever they wanted to for their use. That's what he did with the majority of his use, to whoever, and he was able to move it.
It's government owned now.
Now that it's sitting there, it is government owned, and now the sand is sitting there, it's free for anyone to come load it, take it away. It's there for free. They don't have to pay for it again. You just bring your.
But when you say we acquired it,
We, the Corps of Engineers, acquired it.
we the government.
Yeah, the federal government, the Corps of Engineers acquired that property. It was for sale. I think Bob put it on the market in late 2015, and it sat vacant or sat for sale for 2.5 years, and we finally were able to acquire it through our process.
History is, though, he actually tried to sell it and build a home there, right, Eric? I'm looking at Eric Johnson, yeah, and he was denied a permit, correct? Yeah, okay.
Okay. So then he's like, well, if he was unable to do that, so then he might as well. We were able to go through the appraisal process and acquire it from him based on our appraisal. So we took advantage of that opportunity that was there, that we've been using that site since the mid '80s. Okay, so next slide, Steve. So as you saw on the previous slide, we had about 125,000 cubic yards capacity, and we still need more. We needed probably another 25,000 yards to make sure we got to what we wanted to. So what we did is work with our local, state and federal agencies. Sat down and started rattling off places we could go. We had a meeting in December of 2013. Said, okay, well, we're not able to manage material we had historically. We used to have a site downtown in the harbor here, but the city had some other opportunities, so we had to, again, find another place to go with our sand. So we looked at 27 different places throughout town, starting from up near the airport pit. The Fish and Wildlife Service owns a pit out there. We looked at Prairie Island Road. We looked at a few more things downtown. We looked at areas down on the east side of town. Obviously, we looked at expansion possibly in Homer. We also looked at building some islands and things further downstream. Looked at all these opportunities. Steve, next slide. But as we went through our process, for one reason or another, some of these opportunities were kind of eliminated. And we'll get to some of the details later. But of the 27 sites that we looked at, we narrowed it down to 9. 9 sites that we want to carry forward as our tentatively selected plan, our draft idea of how we can manage this with the least amount of impact. And that's what we came up with. So Stephen, next slide shows our tentatively selected plan. So in the lower left corner, the 2 in light blue are the sites that we currently have access to. Again, what we've acquired in Homer, and then the Winona Harbor site downtown. The green is where we'd like, those are the next places we'd like to look at. Now, if you go over to the 4th column, it says cost per cubic yard. That is how much it'll cost the federal government to get some material to each of those sites. And as you can see, as you go down the list, it gets more and more expensive. And we'll show you on a map. While actually the map in the upper right-hand corner kind of shows you why. So,
While you got that map, I'm confused with Homer West and Homer East.
so
Where-
Homer West is what we currently own, which we purchased from Mr. Hemker.
Right.
Homer East is a property right next door.
To
Just
the
immediately downstream.
okay,
Immediately
downstream.
downstream.
Okay.
We're in discussions with that property owner right now about utilization of that property.
How many acres is that?
Combined, we'll have about 8 acres, so 4 on each side. I think it's 4 and 3, so 7, 8 acres roughly in that area, depending on what we agree to. So again, to get some material to the places that we currently have, basically we're just unloading our barges there and stacking it up, and that's why it's the least costly. As you move down the list, the light green are the next least costly options, and it even shows how much material we can get in those areas. And again, that talks about the Homer East and maybe even expanding on Latch Island. We had a meeting with the city last night talking about our utilization of Latch Island. There's some support, some against. We're gonna have further discussions with the city, and we'd like to involve the community, county if you're interested in that. But and as you move down the list and you get to the yellow, which is the Port Authority, it's the tech park over behind Menards and Hal Leonard over there in Winona Canoe. There's area that we've placed material since probably 2014 that, like we talked about, they bring in material, they'll level off some areas, and then they'll build like where the new Windcraft facility is. Now, there's a pile of sand there, so right now they're not looking for additional material at this time. But as you go down the list, then we get into some of the pits in the area. Matthew Construction owns 2 pits. One, the Yaqui Pit, which is up County Road 15 from Homer. It's about 7 miles from the river. There's the Highway 43 pit that you drive by on your way out to the interstate. If you take 43 on your left-hand side as you're going that way. And then obviously Winona Sand and Gravel has a big old pit over by the airport that they would like to start reclaiming at some point. But if you look at the cost from where we can get it upland and get it just to the site, to get it over to the Winona Sand and Gravel airport site, it's about $20 a yard just to get it there. That doesn't include any agreements or arrangements we would make with the landowner to utilize that property. So we are in discussions with all the entities on here. We don't have an agreement yet. We want to see how this process plays out to see how we move forward with how we're going to move it. So your question was, well, when you talk about shipping them, getting it away from the river and how far I go, well, just moving it upstream, it's probably 10 miles from Homer to the airport, and it's about $20 a yard just to get it there.
Corps own all the equipment, all the dredging equipment?
We own some, a lot of it's contract work.
Okay.
So
Because
under
Mr.
this
Hemker
scenario,
used to,
a
Mr. Hemker
contractor-
himself did that for many years.
Yeah,
Mr.
well,
Hemker
again,
did his,
once the material hit his property, it was his property.
but he did dredge, he actually had dredging equipment also.
Not for us.
Oh, not for you, okay,
No, he may have done some sand and gravel mining.
okay.
Is my understanding.
It's more expensive to float it up the river than it is to take it by truck to the pits? Because you would float it up to Winona Sand and Gravel?
Yes, however, how do you get it over there? We could float it to where to get it unloaded. You need to get the barge somewhere so you can unload it. Right now, we don't own any property up there, and it's too shallow. There's really no way to get it to the airport pit constructively. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, the river is there, but it's not deep enough to get over to the shore.
If you had some material that you could offload, then you'd have something you could.
And then it would fill a wetland and all that stuff. So yeah, it's complicated. It's not as easy as just push it up there and unload it and take it over to the airport. There's got to be a way to do it, a place to do it. And right now, we don't have that.
What about our neighbors, that other state that borders the Mississippi River? What's your plan for them?
For
Wisconsin.
This
There's
is
no
our
s-
plan right now.
There's no space in Wisconsin to dump this?
Not easily to get at. So we did, Steve, you go back 2 slides. We did look at building some islands over in the Trempealeau Refuge.
I thought you had suggested Lambeau Field.
Yeah,
Take a plan.
I would vote for that.
A long way to go. We have some islands proposed and some other work within the Trempealeau Refuge. But again, getting it in there is difficult. We have a railroad trestle that goes all the way across there. You can't easily cross that. You could do it with the hydraulic pipeline, but then you're piping it many, many, many miles. And the longer you go, the more expensive it gets to pipe it. So then you'd have to truck it through town, up over the bridge and back around. And it's about 75 cents a mile to move the material by a truck.
Originally, Mosquito Island, how big did you propose to make that island?
We proposed to do it twice as big than what we actually did, but based on our discussions with our agency partners, we went with a smaller footprint. So I think from its footprint, I think we went upstream about 500 feet. And then we rock stabilized that. We actually had plans to go even further upstream and then kind of do like a candy cane back and have some area there, but that was not acceptable to our partners at the time.
Well, if we made it accessible by Cambling Riverboat, how big would it need to be? Oh, I want to put a gambling riverboat out there as a revenue enhancement, so how big does it need to be for people to get off and enjoy the island?
I don't know.
No? You got to look at revenue enhancement instead of just spending.
Yep, loud and clear. So yeah, we did look at various locations within reasonable reach of the river to claim. So Steve, if you go back to the TSP slide, our tentatively selected plan, our draft plan, based on the cost that we estimated it would take to get to those areas, that's what we came up with as our plan. So what I'll do now is quickly go through some of the details of the site. So next slide, Steve.
Before we go, can we make this available on our county website?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll give that to her. Yep.
All right, thank you.
So the tier 1 sites, again, here is Homer West, which we own on the left, and then Homer East, our proposed area to expand into, and we'll continue our conversations with that current landowner. Obviously, Winona Harbor. To the left, you can see where our sand pile currently is. We have a proposal to expand it by 1 acre or expand it down to the bridge. But our plan talks about a pile height max of about 45 feet and keeping a perimeter of trees around the site so the sand is in the middle and you still have a tree perimeter. And I'll show that more in a minute. Steve, next slide.
That's on the other side of the river?
Yeah, that's over in Latch Island.
Okay.
We'll get to that one in a second. So what you see here is historic aerial imagery of the Homer area. Over on your left, 1956, the area that's outlined in red is basically the 2 Homer sites combined. 1956, there was nothing there. 1972, you can see the results of our dredging operations. 2 piles of sand there. Look to the right, 1977, a lot more piles of sand. So the area in Homer that is there now was created by our dredge material. It's kind of an interesting fact of how that area formed. Next slide, Steve. When looking at the Latch Island area downtown, this was a social media post of an interpretation of someone who glanced at our report and said, oh, they're going to take the bottom image and then transpose a big old pile of sand in the upper left-hand corner. Basically, what they've done here is they've taken a picture of a big pile of sand we up at Reed's Landing that covers about 25 acres, and they put it over this 8-acre area and said, wow, this is what the Corps of Engineers is proposing. No, it's not. Again, our pile height would be a maximum of 45 feet. The trees out on Latch Island, they're 100 feet tall. So
I don't think that complies with current Winona County zoning ordinances. I don't think any private entity would be allowed to do anything of that scale and scope, but you circumvent all local land use ordinances?
This was a discussion we had with the city of Winona to do.
But you haven't had the discussion with Winona County about the
Is it
Homer?
45 feet the max height at either location?
Roughly, yeah. I think it's 50 feet at Homer. From the river, now there is a big steep bank that comes up at Homer the way it exists, so yeah, 45, 50 feet is the max.
So you're saying it's already like 20 feet high and you're only proposing another 20 feet?
Roughly. You know, we don't want to be a huge pile if we can avoid it. If we have more room to spread it out, then pile height will come.
The other question I have is, you keep using the words there for beneficial use. So if the material is placed there, how long would you see it sitting there before it is displaced again for beneficial use? Or
Depends on projects in the area and the
or you,
community that has use for
if the permission is given, is it quite likely going to just end up a permanent spot and it's just going to sit there full,
I wouldn't
loaded
think
full?
so. It hasn't yet, since 1989.
But it could.
I guess it's possible, and then we would look at, if you go through that tiered
There wouldn't be
approach-
any recourse to
Well, no, there would be. If we would go through that tiered approach, if the material wouldn't move, we would look at going to the next cost level and moving the material out of there so it's not a pile of sand sitting there. Because we're going to have to constantly create the capacity so we can bring more sand in, because the dredging of the river is not going to stop anytime soon. So again, the proposal is to hopefully beneficial use will keep up with what we're doing. It has historically. But if it's not, there'll be a trigger point within our management saying, okay, next season, we know we're probably gonna have to dredge, there's a pile of sand there, we have to take some action to move that out of there. And that's where we look into.
So you don't have an average, or you don't know how much is used each year, or do you figure it by each year, how much the pile goes down, or?
It depends on where the pile is. And it's variable from year to year. It is variable, depends on the projects and the use.
Okay, and do farmers use it for bedding
Yes, they do.
sand?
Yes. Yes, that's a major use throughout our district, from Minneapolis down to Guttenberg, Iowa. A lot of the material goes towards cattle
Go for
bedding,
that,
Yep.
okay.
as well as
Don't-
road sanding and salt. Yep.
I've
Wondered
never heard
about
of any of our local dairy, I would have to ask them. I've never heard them say they come there and get sand.
Is that where our highway department is that the pile we're getting it from?
My understanding.
I mean, when Tim talks about coming up river. Yeah,
Yeah, we get it from the city, so.
import, one of my neighbors, and I know I've talked to him quite often, and he is anxious for us to get that Homer site open, and it's crossing our ends and turn lanes, and they said if they can move it. I know he talked to the railroad, last year, he wanted to move material from there, but they have to have a railroad flagman, and there's liability issues, so he didn't want to touch it until.
Yes, we talked about that at Road and Bridge this morning. It's not as easy as it's a problematic site.
No,
Yeah.
but we are
I don't
proposing
think
some
the
improvements.
railroad's moving anytime soon.
Nope, but we have proposed improvements, which I'll get to in a minute.
I
Okay.
have one more question too. When businesses use this, or do they pay for it and does it?
Well, when they take it from the Corps of Engineers, Homer West side is free. All they have to do is load it and haul it. Now, it's owned by the city, so the material on Latch Island, they need to work out an agreement with the city to take that sand, because it is city
City makes
property.
revenue off it.
I'm not sure what they do with it. I believe they do, but I don't know.
You won't,
Same
kn-
with what's behind, in Tech Park right now. Contractors, whoever, the county, they can work out an arrangement with the city to utilize the material.
you don't know the answer to this, but something I want the county attorney to, what kind of sand is this? We got a lawsuit going on about sand. I mean, I don't know how that,
Medium grain sand.
well, we got a
so,
lawsuit going on
so
about
I guess the
sand.
question would be, could it be
Industrial,
used in the frac sand industry?
it could.
Excuse me?
I was
Could it
told,
be used in the frac
It
sand
would have
industry?
to be processed extensively.
so then it probably is
But it would-
illegal
so
sand, it's
we would
probably
prohibit
illegal
that from
sand in
happening
Winona
with it,
County.
right?
What's that? I'm sorry, Commissioner Jacobs.
Winona County would prohibit that use, correct?
Well, it depends on what, under the current
If the
zoning, of course, it's
lawsuit
still
doesn't,
subject to, yeah, we haven't heard from them.
Okay, so that puts another wrinkle in it. Okay, and I know that's nothing that has to do with you, but it's part of our reality.
It'd be extensive processing.
So in that picture, you said that's a picture of approximately 25 acres of sand?
Yeah, that was.
So what is the size? Is
so
it
the
a
next-
third of that,
next-
or
next-
is it?
If you go to the next slide now, if you look in the lower left-hand corner, that's a more realistic depiction of how the material will be managed at Latch Island. Again, we'll keep
That
a
what's
perimeter
there-
of trees.
That's what's there currently?
No,
or-
no, what's there currently is way to the left. There's a,
Okay.
way to the left of the image in the lower left-hand corner, that pile of sand, and that's what's there now. What we're saying is if we would expand to the full limits of what's proposed at Latch Island, there would be a pile of sand there. And again, people can come in and take that sand out of there. It wouldn't always be there, depends on, again, it'd be city property, depending on the projects they have or users needing the sand. They'll take the sand out of there and use it for the salt. But again, we would propose a max pile height of 45 feet, which is half the height of the trees that are out there. And we'd only be on the interior of that. We'd keep a perimeter of trees on the outside, next to the river, and on the backside, next to the parking lot. And then,
how's that
again, we're not trying
compared?
to hide it, but we're trying to, make it a
Does
little
it-
more aesthetic.
Does it jet out into the river?
Nope.
No.
How's that
it's
Next
just-
to the
compare-
river, like it is now, people can beach there, and their boat. Right
That's the same plan for the Homer site, 45 feet,
Yeah,
and there's
okay.
already, is there trees there too or
There
not?
are some trees there, and we bring in additional. Again, we're holding off on
But
doing
you're-
major improvements there until we move forward.
Saying you wouldn't, the pile would not exceed the height of the trees,
Yes,
existing trees.
yes. And we'll get to that in a minute too, so. if
What,
move
were
forward.
you involved in the project in Wabasha County?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any pictures of what's going on in Wabasha? Because I know there's a lot of sand up there when you go up 61, but I don't know what is your
Well,
sand and,
We're still working with the city of Waukesha on our, the solution there. We're working with the city on a cost share agreement, or a 217 agreement, where we're gonna work with the city and pay them to manage the material up to what it would cost us to manage the material.
that you bought private property to stockpile this on?
We acquired some properties in Kellogg, which is not for the Wabasha material. So, but there are other property owners that have come forward that we're just having discussions with regarding the acquisition of their property as well for use of our dredge material.
That hasn't been resolved yet?
Nope.
Okay.
Still working on that.
That's not on your list of,
Yeah, because
No,
that's
'cause
in a
it-
different pool.
That's just for the
That's-
oh,
school.
that's not
Yeah.
pool
We're just
6,
talking
Right.
about pool
okay.
six.
Yeah,
That's
because
right.
Wabasha had the same,
Yeah.
Good
So
question.
when you talk about transportation, back when we were dealing with frac sand, they were always talking about moving it hydraulic through pipes and slurrying. Is that not a consideration for you?
It is if we have enough property on which to manage the material. So when you dredge hydraulically, you need a bigger footprint, because the water has to have some place to go and decant so the sand will drop out. So if we're able to acquire some larger properties, if we're able to expand Latch Island, if we're able to do a little more expansion down at Homer, we'd be able to dredge hydraulically, which would be more efficient for us as well. It would reduce the cost of just dredging in general because it's a bigger job. And
Or even to move it to whichever location that you're looking to move it to, can it?
again, all depends on how far. Depends on how far you're going to try and push it in a pipeline. As soon as you start, you can move sand roughly a mile with just the dredge. But if you start going 2 or 3 miles, every mile you got to add booster pumps in there, which costs money to run them, the diesel, the employees, staff, and all that. It gets more and more expensive the farther and farther you try and push it hydraulically. So depending on how far you're going with it and where it's going, it's a lot of time more economical to move it by a truck. Okay, Steve, next slide. All right, so again, Port Authority, there's some places behind this tech park. Again, to get it there is about $16 a yard, depending on where we take it off the river, and we'll try and utilize it as opportunities come forward. Next slide is this is the tier 3 site. So these are the pits in the area that we'll utilize at some point here. Again, the cost to get in the pits is anywhere from $16.50 a yard versus $19.50 versus the $10 or $11 we're looking at managing it and how we're proposing. Again, we need to get to these sites. It costs money to get them up there. And again, that's just the cost to get it there. That does not involve any real estate to either purchase the pit or even have a lease to use the pit. And we'd have to negotiate with the owners about utilization of that. So that cost will go up per cubic yard. So again, we're trying to be stewards of the dollars and the resources. And, it's not the only factor, but cost is a big factor in this. So next slide, Steve. So community concerns. Steve and one of my coworkers, Zach, met with community members in Homer in May of 2019, or in May 29th of 2018. And pile height was a concern, noise, truck traffic, all kinds of concerns were brought up in loud and clear. The image on the right is the result of that meeting. The pile of sand that you see on the right there was nearly as tall as the tree in the background. Well, based on that meeting, we went out there and we spread things out. We said, okay, loud and clear, we understand. We're going to try and live within this community. We will react and spread this pile out. We'll continue to do that as long as we have room. And, again, we're going to continue to place sand there. Once we make some improvements there, which we're working with CP Rail and MnDOT to put in crossing arms and widen the entrance in there, and put in turn lanes off Highway 61, so it's a little safer for the trucks to come in and come out. And then that opportunity is there. Like Steve mentioned, the county will come in and get sand, and other contractors in the area, we get calls a lot looking for sand to say, well, go to Homer and get it. Right now, they need to pay CP Rail $75 an hour for a flagman to stand out there and say, yes, you can come in, you can't go, you're no train, whatever. So it's expense on them, and that's why they're hesitant to take the sand out of there right now, because it's additional cost. So we're looking to do some improvements there. Again, we'll reduce the pile height as much as possible. We'll remove material as needed, and when there's space available to take it to. Right now, I said we don't have any other place to take it. We don't have any agreements with any other pits in the area to take the sand. Again, we'll incorporate screening and the safety improvements. Next slide, Steve. Just to show an example of, here's the site in Trempealeau, other side of the river, right over by Lock and Dam 6. I'm going to come over here. This is a berm built around the on the berm, and there's grasses on the berm, and there's trees in front of the berm. We're just trying to blend in. Next slide, Steve. Hold on. Before we go to that one, the next slide is a picture here looking into the site. So you're standing in the corner there, and that's kind of what it looks like when you drive by.
But are you looking towards the river or away from the
Your
river?
back is to the river, and you're looking at the pile of sand.
Your
what
back
you're
is
seeing
there.
there,
So
your back is to the
Homer's
river.
kind of different.
Right,
You
understood.
get your back to the hill and you're looking at the sand and you can't see the river.
Okay.
Yeah, you're opposite. So here you're hiding something on the hillside,
Well, it's not the hillside. It's right level with the Lock and Dam. It's right here.
but you're not you're not trying to see the river.
Understand.
If I'm standing where that stop sign is, I'm not trying to see the river.
I'm just saying that the pile of sand here is we're able to blend in and.
Right. So
make it
I
more
think
aesthetically
if we
pleasing.
started filling in Cedar Valley and stuff, maybe it wouldn't be as bad because people live on the river to see the river and you're blocking the river view. So it is different than what
Yes.
that
You have a
is.
picture from the river looking at that, how high it,
No, this is
Oh,
just.
if you were on the river and looked
This is
back?
you're standing on the road
Yeah.
looking at the pile.
Right.
The bottom
Again,
picture.
my point here is just showing, we can build some berms and plant some trees and help screen the site a little bit. The bottom picture is basically standing inside of the site, looking back towards the photographer here, just showing that that's the interior. There's a berm. I just want to show you how tall the berm is. And then we've done our planting and things on that, to help try and be a little more.
How long does it take a tree like that to maintain full?
We did these improvements in about 2005. We brought in some pretty sizable trees, and we plant grasses.
So it takes 15 to 20 years to get a tree that size. And this is a 20-year plan, so maybe at the end of the period, they might be
Well,
full
like I said,
grown.
we'll bring in some larger trees, some big, some small, grasses. We'll try and blend in, right? Again, we're not trying to hide anything. We're just trying to blend in.
Yeah, you're hiding the, yeah, okay, because it's a different angle. It's a different view shed. Okay,
Okay, so next slide.
I appreciate you trying to do, what you're trying to do. You're trying to hide it, that's okay.
No, we're not trying to hide it. We're trying to blend in. Feel more aesthetically pleasing. So, again, we're in a public comment period right now. We want to hear comments. We've been working on, you can see we had agency meetings back in 2013. And since then, most recently in October 2018, the county was involved. As city, the Fish and Wildlife Service, the DNRs.
Oh, I'm sorry, how was the county involved? I beg to,
Eric just left. He was at the 2018 meeting. Talk about where we're going with our planning.
okay, but you did not advise local electeds. I don't ever remember the board being advised
Don't
at
know
these
that was
meetings.
our responsibility, but we're learning that we need to directly work with the board and make sure they're being informed. We learned
Yes.
that last night too with the city council, because we've been working with many folks within the city and the Port Authority, and the city council didn't know much about the plan either.
Right.
So that's the same case here. We've been working with our contacts within the county, didn't know that they weren't bringing material.
And-
I'm not trying to throw anybody
and-
under the bus.
no,
but
no,
I
no,
didn't know
but-
that was.
Your organization of the Army Corps of Engineers, they are not elected people, correct? They are professional,
Yep. Yep.
that's their job. I mean, they sign up to work, yeah. See, there's a gap there.
Again, we had county folk involved. I
You
didn't
had,
know that.
you had staff to staff.
Okay.
My point is, you need staff to electeds who are representing the constituency.
Okay.
So just put it in your notes next time.
We got it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, can
Yes.
I ask a question?
Yes.
Because I did highlight that part on your public notice. You talked about, under permits and coordination, that the proposed action has been coordinated with, among others, including like the Fish and Wildlife, DNR, local government units and others. Is that what you're referring to in the?
Yeah,
October
yeah. Again, the
2018?
staffers,
Okay.
the local staff, and actually congressionals. We had a bus tour in 2016 where we had Klobuchar's office, Kine's office, Hagedorn. I don't know if Hagedorn's office was at the time, but Senator Smith. We had a bus tour with our folks from Vicksburg. Took a tour of pools 4, 5, and 6, and it informed the elected officials of what was occurring with our planning process and some of the challenges we faced.
Federal and state
Yes,
officials.
yes, yep.
Right, but not the local.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry, as well as a job they try to do, I mean,
Again,
if you gave them a world map, could they find
we know
Winona?
that now, that we have to
Yeah.
make sure that when we're talking with your
You need-
staffers, that they're communicating.
Right, because we are the local land use authority in Winona County, and it's a little disheartening that, yeah, we're finding out about this now.
Yeah, same here.
Okay,
Okay.
all right,
So we're in a public comment period. It was extended an additional 30 days.
Thank you.
And next slide, Steve. Just kind of moving forward, we want to click through these. Again, we want to continue to work in collaboration with the county, city, the community, to try to do some material management strategies moving forward, like we talked about the trucking and whatever else. We'll seek and promote some additional beneficial use in the area. There's been a few ideas that the city has come up with. And then we'll look at, seek some management opportunities. Like you mentioned, with our arrangement with the city of Wabasha, we are working on an agreement with them where we're going to do this section 217D agreement, where we will pay the city of Wabasha, their port authority, a tipping fee to manage the material for us. So we will get the material to a facility of theirs, and then we will pay them up to what it would cost us to manage material, and then they will manage the material from there. And they are giving us a proposal on what their cost would be to manage the material. That's entirely up to the entity,
Or does that mean reselling it or giving it away?
whatever they want to do with it. Yep. It's their material to manage and seek any opportunities. They'll get sale, using, filling pits, filling ball fields in their own communities, whatever they want to do with it for development.
I've heard this term quite often, promote beneficial use. Is your organization required to do any kind of environmental review, assessment worksheet, EIS? Have those been done?
Yes, of the properties that we are using, yes. We've done environmental assessments of the Homer West site prior to our acquisition.
And there's no little bug or frog or anything that would be in jeopardy or any constituent?
We have an environmental assessment that you can see.
Okay, so that's in the file somewhere on your,
Yeah, this report has a draft environmental assessment as well.
so when was that done? Because I'm told that takes years to do those. So when did you,
We started working on it in 2013.
He did a worksheet,
Did
not
that
an,
include,
not a EIS.
We did not do an EIS. We did an environmental assessment.
Okay.
It's not a worksheet, that's a state term. We're doing an environmental
You did
assessment.
an EAW, not a EIS.
yes, right,
Correct.
yeah, the lesson.
We did an environmental assessment.
You didn't even have to do an
is a
EAW.
state. Yeah, it's a different process.
That a
similar,
federal?
but different. We did
A
an
federal?
environmental assessment, which is a supplement of our 1996 environmental impact statement for the navigation program on the Mississippi River.
you also do an archaeological assessment?
All that is part of this, yes. It's all been, and it's in this draft report. So, Steve, I think there might be one more slide, maybe. Otherwise, I believe that is it. Any other questions you may have? Again, the comment period, here's where you can make your comments to the team reviewing the report. Any further questions?
So can you stay here till after the
Yes.
public hearing, and then when we have our discussion, if we have questions, we can still ask?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay.
You bet.
They are our employees. They work for the federal government. Right? They
They're the
work for
people's
us.
employees.
Yeah, yes. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we will open, any other comments or questions right now? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I would second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Meyer to open the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, that's approved. Our general rules for the public hearing are 2 minutes, and we have this little clock up here so you can see where you stand on your 2 minutes. And we'll start with Mike Chickanowski. And everybody state their name and address for the record, please.
Mike Chickanowski, address is 34657 Old Homer Road. That's the property behind the Black Horse. I have a couple hundred acres there. What I do, I wear many hats. Winona Canoe is my business. I love the river. I'm president of the Winona Port Authority for a very long time. I've been on a port for probably 20 years. I've been involved in every sand discussion that the city has been involved with Army Corps since then. I love the river. Winona is the third largest port in Minnesota. Duluth is number 1. I think there's one in the cities that has more tonnage, and we're the third largest port by tonnage. It's a valuable part of us. It's a part of Winona. I mean, we need to keep the river open. We need to keep it, usable. But, the solution is to not pile sand all over the place. You have to, piles everywhere isn't the solution. The solution is to deal with it right away. Now, we've been working with the Corps, and I think we have some solutions in the city that might work. I don't really want to talk about them now, but, my opposition to the Homer site is that the house on the river next to the Homer site is also my house. That's my river house. I bring people there from all over the world. They love the river, they see it, and it's a big part of me. The truck traffic can be an issue. I'm okay with the pile the way it is. The size of that pile will be a problem. I mean, that's a problem. I don't really relish the fact of crossing arms with the bells dinging all day long. I mean, that can be a problem too. But the biggest thing with a beneficial site is that people have to have a need for the sand. The county uses, I don't know if it's 10 or 15,000 yards a year. The city uses that much. I think Winona can deal with about 25 or 35,000 yards of sand a year. It takes big projects to get rid of these huge piles. Right now, on the port's property, east end Winona behind Hill Leonard, we probably have 125,000 yards there, and we won't let the Corps put more on that until we get that moved out, and that could take a long time. There's an awful big pile down there, and we just need to, figure out what to do with it right away. I mean, making piles all over town isn't really the answer. Um, I don't think they started in '84 on that Hemker site. I don't think. I bought that with Bob, and I got to look at my notes. It couldn't have been that long ago. That's 34 years ago. There never was a way out of there until he got the railroad to get a crossing. And that took a long time to get that crossing. They sued the railroad for that. So there never was a way out of that site. It was used to haul sand in, but never any sand was hauled out of that site. And I'd have to see, was it 20 years ago, 15 years ago? It sure wasn't 34 years ago. It just wasn't. But it has been a sandbar that long, so.
All right, thank you, Mike. Next, Mike Pence.
Mike Pitts, 36074 Old Homer Road, Sugarloaf Ford and Chrysler, Winona. I've been a Homer resident for probably 25 years. And I've been in 3 or 4 different homes in Homer, and for only one reason, it's the view of the river. And if you take a drive down, I mean, each one of you, if you took a drive down or looked at what's there now and add 25 feet and some trees, on an elevated position, you can't see the river. The value of Homer, the whole area, is the value of the view. I mean, that's why we live there, all of us. It's not 2 or 3 houses, it's the whole thing. It's a gateway to Winona. And it's an eyesore. And you know that pile's been there forever. There's so much sand there right now. There's not a project big enough to use it. And you're gonna triple it. And you're gonna raise it up 25 more feet. It's unbelievable. You can't appreciate it until you do that. So take a drive out there and take a look. There's gotta be other options. We know they are, you know. We live in one of the most beautiful areas in the country. I travel all over the country, and I always come back to Winona. My old partner says, you know, it just doesn't get any more pretty than it is right here. And it really is. This will be there forever. The pile's been there now since I can remember, but I know when Bob had it flat, it was beautiful. You can see the river is gorgeous. That goes away from an elevated site. Just take a look, put the brakes on this thing, take a look. I mean, their problem should not become your problem or our problem. It's their problem. Make it work with the community. It's just not the right thing to do. I'll date myself, but Paul Harvey once said the prettiest view in the United States is from Winona, Minnesota to La Crosse, Wisconsin. And I think looking at a bunch of sand piles doesn't enhance the beauty at all. The river's not going to close. We know that. They just need to find a better solution. Thanks.
Thank you. Tanya Wicca? Yeah.
Tanya Wicca, 36437 Old Homer Road. Do I have to talk on this?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So one thing that was told at the beginning of this, it was there wasn't a house that they wouldn't allow being built on that site. But we have to look at it, and so we're going to have a sand pit in our community, and that's going to be allowed to be done. I'm not okay with that. We have seen the trucks being all the way down the road. About 20 trucks I've seen lined up. Then everybody gets in the left-hand lane. You can't turn. I have kids that we turn onto 61 from the road. It's dangerous. No matter how they try to make this a safety thing, it's not going to work on a 7-acre land plus their 50, plus all of their land, plus their trees, or all their sand, plus their trees that they're willing to put on. It's not going to work. It's going to cost money. So therefore, there goes their cost adjustment. Also, with the airborne sand particulates, I'm in healthcare. I know how sand can affect your lungs. I take x-rays and CAT scans. I take x-rays on people that deal with the sand in the government because the government is wondering what that is doing to them. When that sand gets messed up with the dump trucks, dump loaders, that goes into our front yard. How many cubic inches go into our front yard? It's just not right. And plus there's about 40, that river is about 40% frac sand. They can do their stuff. It's still going to be dredged up. It's still going to be taken in. Is that going to be, are they going to put testing on that every year, every month? Probably not. So I'm just worried about all the airborne sand that comes in. So, I had a couple other things here. Well, just I can't believe they're worried about the economical impact, but then they're gonna put so much money, taxpayer dollars, into trying to make that safe. And it's not gonna be safe on a 7-acre lot.
Thank you. Aaron Ebert?
Hi, I'm Aaron Eberhard. I'm with Congressman
Eberhard.
Jim Hagedorn's office. Just a comment before this federal elected official, Congressman Hagedorn, could find Winona on a map. Our office has been in contact with the Army Corps of Engineers. Past couple of days here, we've asked for an explanation as the thought process in this slideshow. You guys did a great job explaining it, answered a lot of questions, and we'll be. Where was I here? We're eager to be helpful the rest of the way in this process, help find a solution that resolves the issue for all parties involved, including Winona County, the citizens of Winona County, and the Army Corps of Engineers. As this discussion continues, we hope to be a large part of this process, and we'll do everything we can to help out where applicable. So if you guys have any other questions for me, I'll be around as long as you guys will, until you kick me out of here. So just ask me and I'll be happy to help. Thanks.
Thank you. Wayne Wicca.
Good evening, Board. Wayne Wicca, 36437 Old Homer Road, Homer, Minnesota. Ground zero of the ecological disaster that they're actually proposing for us. That's what it is. Look back at the history. They filled in about 2+ acres of wetlands, maybe 3 acres. Now they're looking to fill in another 1.5 acres. So what do we have? We really lost a lot. We lost an arm, okay? We can survive. We lost an arm, we lost a right arm. We can still work and function with the left hand, okay? But we lost some of our mobility and our ability to have a good quality life. It's an ecological disaster. Let's not forget why we're here. We are in residential neighborhood. We are not somewhere out in sticks. This is a residential neighborhood. It's unbelievable. There was no communication from the Corps when they even stepped in. Bob Hemker promised never again put sand there, and that was for 2.5 years. We've lived there for 10.5 years, about 10 years, and everything they say, it doesn't come to reality. They're long in intent, short on facts, and they don't comply and they don't follow through. They need to do a study here. This one involves humans, and this is a social impact assessment, and this is to see how large industrial complexes actually affect the quality of life of people socially, economically, financially, you name it. We got some quick points here. Point number 1, 112 people signed a petition in Homer. Of the 115 people we contacted, 2 just didn't want to actually sign anything, and 1 was actually a government employee, so therefore couldn't participate, has to be neutral. Number 1, protecting and preserving Homer, Minnesota. Specifically, how does your expansion proposal guarantee to protect and preserve the beauty and the charm of and idyllic nature of Homer, Minnesota for generations to come? Especially when you have not protected Homer, not even remotely close, on the existing site. Planting trees is not an acceptable option to change the massive blight that you're about to put upon us. Point number 2, the Homer community offered you a win-win proposal. You rejected it. Homer's win-win proposal requires a maximum dredge pile height limit of 10 to 15 feet, and the community of Homer to be restored and made whole within 120 days. Keep your site clean, 15 feet, you're good for the next sand season. You didn't do that. How can you guarantee we will not be adversely impacted? You're not going to impact us in any way, environmentally, socially, financially, by proposing both a higher and larger dump site when you failed with a smaller site. The last thing is the airborne particulates are real. When the air actually hits it, gusts of winds, it is suspended. It comes off a 50-foot cliff. It's airborne. It's in our lungs, and that can actually lead to lung cancer, OCD, OCP, everything else that comes with it. This is a bad proposal. We're being sold a bill of goods that's equal to 2 black eyes, and supposedly supposed to be a good thing for Winona County and for the Homer residents. This is a bad proposal. It needs to be stopped. We urge you to vote no with regard to the Corps' proposal on what they're planning to do to us in Winona County. Thank you.
Ted Hazelton.
Ted Hazelton, 1073 West Fifth Street in Winona. And I've been following this, and my concern is the potential for the pile at Latch Island. A lot of those trees are not 100 feet tall. I know that because I shoot the fireworks there for Steamboat Days. So there will be sand there, and the trees are not going to hide it. I would also like to reiterate that I do have the utmost respect for the Army Corps of Engineers, as a family member of mine worked for them for 30 plus years until they retired. And they do a great job keeping our navigational channel open for the river pleasure craft and commerce that gets shipped up and down in the barges. I do feel for the people in the Homer area. Recently, somebody wrote a letter, it was in the opinion page of both papers, and it might be worth looking into. It was written by a fella named Dean Nuzlock, something to that effect, from Utica. And his idea is, why can't the dredge spoils be dumped in the old former Madison silo pit, fill that in, that's surrounded by the River Road, Pelzer, the railroad tracks, and Beer Street. And then that could be filled in. It wouldn't be as transported nearly as far. It could still be pushed through hydraulically with the dredge, eliminate the trucking to move the sand, and would open up many acres for potential economic development, industries, homes, etc. As mentioned earlier, I think there are better solutions. I would encourage the Army Corps of Engineers to work a little better with the citizens and the local officials, not so much worrying about the federal and state officials, because local people should have a say in this. So them are my observations and concerns, and I hope that something can be worked out to benefit all parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Moses Simon?
Hello, my name is Moses Simon. I recently purchased 36603 Old Homer Road. I've grown up in Winona, spent most of my life here. I was actually born in a boathouse on Latch Island, so I have a great love of the river. We've been searching for a couple years for a property, and on Old Homer Road, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Looking out there over the river with the bluffs behind you, me and my wife plan to build a house there, and I just really don't want a big sand pile to be there blocking the views. It also blocks the view from Highway 61, which is, you know, a great transport and beautiful way that people view our community. So I just don't think it would be a great way for, I think it would be a bad thing to have blocking the beauty of our county. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak? I think we got everybody covered. All right, motion to close.
Ask 3 times, or did you?
I guess I saw everybody. Is there anybody else wishing to speak? Is there anybody else wishing to speak? 1 point. Go ahead. I'll allow 1 point.
Yeah, really quickly, I kind of rushed through this, but the other thing is, from a point of compensation for those people that are adversely impacted, I am at ground zero, and this is for the Corps, for Colonel Carl Jansen, who's actually making this decision, and also Major General Toy down in Vicksburg, Mississippi. And this would also be their boss as well in Washington, D.C., Lieutenant General Simone. On the existing site in Homer, you have made no attempt to remedy or compensate Homer community residents who are adversely harmed today by the Corps' actions and behaviors on the present-day dump site, causing property value depreciation caused by massive blight. Question: how can we believe you will both remedy and compensate the residents who are already impacted 24/7 365 days a year from your current dump site, let alone tripling the size of the dredge pile. I don't see it. I don't understand it. If you have an answer, please speak.
Thank you. All right.
I move to close public hearing.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacobs, second by Commissioner Olson to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Questions from the board members? Yes, Commissioner.
I guess this is for our county attorney, I'm not sure. I want to know,
Yeah.
what is our,
Our authority.
Yeah.
well, I mean, our authority is through our zoning ordinance, and if they're meeting the zoning ordinance, then,
But they're, well,
I did do actually some real quick research on that, and I'd like to have the opportunity to do a little more than, but under 394.2.24 subdivision 3, official controls, no land owned or leased by the federal or state government shall be subject to official controls of the
they're exempt.
represent in terms of
so we can send them a letter or
Right.
convey a message, but legally,
legally, there wouldn't be, like, they don't have to apply for a CUP.
so we can't control what they do through our zoning
And I
ordinance.
think just answering, I think the concern about the house that was a private property owner who
Right.
was wanting to build a house, which is different than the Corps of Engineers, which is a federal agency wanting to stockpile sand.
Right,
so.
right. And just, you know, we held this meeting today because we thought the public comment period was closing prior to our next. So now we have until what, April 10th?
10th.
Okay, so we do have some time if we want to allow legal to craft or, you know, do any more research or even staff, I mean, to
Sure.
craft a statement.
And that could even include just a letter of our support or lack of support, or
Right, right.
reinforcing the citizens' concern.
Right, and I think everybody got copied, both Senator Miller and Representative Plowski had the opportunity to visit last Saturday and did say that in a very brief statement that they do not support the Corps' project in the Homer. We didn't talk about the city, but it was the Homer site specifically, and they do not support the proposal by the Corps to stockpile sand there.
We can take, our power extends as far as we can take a vote, board majority takes a position, and we can create a resolution and forward that.
Yeah, we bring a resolution back, reflecting that vote, you know, the sentiment of that vote.
Right.
Or-
You're not gonna be here at March 10th meeting, right?
Right.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Mhm.
So March 20th.
Yeah, we have that time,
Right, we have
because we have
time.
April 10th.
Whatever that,
Right.
Tuesday, March 20th.
Yeah.
Was there any official action at the city council meeting?
No, I was
Aware of
looking
it.
for
Yeah, I
that
think they
information,
talked to
but I
them in
couldn't
free
find it.
council, didn't they?
Yeah.
And at the council meeting?
Did they? At the council meeting itself? Okay.
Chris, were you there? Okay,
Yeah, that's
thank
right.
you.
That's right,
Thank
they
you.
are, that's right.
And I think one of the things that's very frustrating is that we're trying to represent our citizens, and yes, it's in my district, but it is the gateway to Winona. But, and again, these gentlemen are our targets today, that there's such a lack of respect for including us from the get-go, that they want to do something like this. And, you know, staff to staff, but it wasn't any electeds. You know, the county board wasn't advised that this was all happening. I think the township finally had a meeting a week or two ago. Somebody came, am I correct? Somebody came to the township level and explained this? Yeah, the citizens did. And so that's irritating that one government entity decides not to include the local government entity, although, you know, like Karen read, we don't have any authority, but we do represent our constituency. So I guess for us to either join with the city on a committee or something, at least to hold them account, you know, the Corps more accountable with our local voices. That would be a desire. So I'm not sure if a committee does that or how we get included in these meetings.
Yeah, well, and I think that the whole committee aspect of the city really is because they have other properties and they have other alternatives for ways that they, something else that they could offer. So the question I would ask is, do we have some alternative property?
Yeah, I got land in rural Noda. I
Well,
mean,
anyway,
if you
because
pump it up the hill.
I mean, because the piece on Latch Island, they have a lease agreement with the
Right.
city, but the city didn't know, the city owns it. Whereas in this case, the Corps actually owns this property, so legally that kind of changes that whole, I mean, I think that approach, right?
Yep. Yep. Well, we could go down, we could find the landowner that's next to him and the county could buy it before the Corps does. And then we could stop it. I mean, we could make a county park down there, Chickanowski Landing or something, you know? Yes, you look like you have a piece of information for us.
Well, I guess I just want to address
Yeah.
what the group say. I mean, we certainly meant no disrespect by not engaging you guys. We thought we were following our process, engaged our, one of the things that did come out of the council meeting last night was that the mayor and at least one or two other board members, council members will meet with our senior leaders, the colonel and some of our senior leaders. I guess I would extend that to the county as well.
Yep.
If you guys are interested, we can
Yes.
make those contacts.
So, as long as you're up here, I have a question, maybe one of you two can answer. So, I feel like if this were the private sector and they wanted to accomplish this, it's not that you don't have another option, you have a second option, you just showed us that it's more expensive. You have to truck it farther and that's unfortunate. And normally we would just say, too bad, private sector.
Yep.
That's your cost of doing business. But, so my question to you is, how many dollars? I mean, I understand how many dollars, it's about double the price, but what's that number? I want to know what that number is.
So over the life of the.
What's the impact to the taxpayer?
So over the life of the plan, the way we have it proposed on the tier one sites, over 20 years, it'll cost us taxpayers, over $14 million. Over 20 years. So $10 additional $1 million over the 20-year life of the plan.
$500,000 a year.
And that's spread over every federal taxpayer, not just Winona County.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's-
so it's federal tax
That's
dollars.
provided that another option doesn't.
I'll just answer your question.
Yep.
Least
Mhm.
cost to what's
Mhm.
being proposed to truck it to the other pits that we don't have. So it's an additional 12.
So, I guess for, not questions for you, but discussion with this board. Private sector issues come before us, and I'm sitting on the planning commission, and somebody wants to exercise their property rights. Normally, I'm gonna say, well, whoever owns it, it's really their property rights, and be more, in this case, the government owns it, so it is owned by the people. We're not dealing with a private landowner, we're dealing with, we all own that property essentially, and the people who are speaking against the proposal, they have some stake in the game. It's really partly their property. Whereas normally I'm gonna say, it's not your property and you should buy it if you wanna control it.
Right.
But the public already has bought it through the Army Corps. So I guess it feels like a different position than what we're normally in.
It is.
I'm thinking, particularly since this is in your perhaps since they've invited the commissioners to meet with their leadership, that maybe you would be interested in doing that. And
Sure,
I would
I would.
support, and I would support that.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the invitation.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that. And then I certainly feel like I'm happy to at least, at a minimum, a resolution that asks them to explore some alternatives, given the opposition on the part of the citizens in the residents of Homer. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but that, I think I'd like to see that, a minimum of a resolution that had those kind of contents to it.
And the one point that Mr. Wickham made, the residents could live with a 10 to 15 foot, height and, get it cleaned out like at least every other year or something. But I think Mr. Wick has sent us all some current pictures, and it's much larger than what, so they did propose a win-win, but it doesn't seem like that's, maybe we can negotiate something and still use that site. But yes, so today, maybe, do we just want Attorney Sonneman and Mr. Fritz to draft some type of resolution that we can look at for our March, what did we determine, March 24th meeting? That would still meet the deadline. And I guess at this point, do we feel we want to take any kind of vote saying that we have a consensus?
If we're gonna ask administration and legal to draft something, it really has to come from us.
Right, so do we want to say we oppose the I guess all we have control over or a say in is the Homer.
Well, we
West
can't
and
say
east.
anything we want, because
Yeah.
it's just a resolution.
Right.
We have
yes,
no legal.
Yeah, but I don't know that we want to weigh in on the cities because we don't have all the facts or.
As far as asking them to explore other options, in a way they have, unless we ask them to explore additional other options. If they limited the pile height at Homer to 10 or 15 feet, how much could they store there? And so how much other land would they need to be looking for, because that's a compromise too. So I don't know if that's possible.
But as one of the speakers said, that's really not, that's their problem, not Homer residents' problem. But you're right.
Yeah,
I mean, how much more do they
if we could offer them
need?
some other property,
Yeah.
then that would.
Got that park up on the hill.
I'm unfamiliar with the Madison silo site that was brought up. Is anyone familiar?
It's an industrial, yeah.
Isn't it up by,
Brink owns it, I think.
Kind of behind Madison School. It's Beer Street and whatever road cuts in off of River Road there. I forget what it's
It's
called.
not a wetland?
I think, no, I think you're thinking just a little bit past there.
I'm not 100% sure where it is either.
Well, just because it gets to be problematic once you start dealing with the wetland.
Yeah, it
Right.
would, for
The
sure.
city has property there, and that's where you go and collect sand from the city that you can use on your
Yeah, I mean,
driveway
it's
and
too
stuff.
bad there's not a solution that,
But you bring
exactly
up,
what happened with Fleet Farm years ago.
you bring up wetland, I mean, so the whole river, in my opinion, the whole river corridor is wetland. And as a private citizen, you wouldn't be able to fill it in wetland without replacing wetland. But here again, we got a federal government that says we can do this and don't have to follow the rules everybody else has to follow. So isn't that Homer area considered a wetland? So where are you,
To be determined. We would mitigate it. We would fill the property, Homer East, we would mitigate it.
so is that in your dollars and cents for moving it?
Yes, ma'am. So is the improvement to the railroad crossing. Part of it.
Okay. But you don't know where you're gonna buy land to,
There's a mitigation bank within
but MnDOT just told me there's very little land in the state of Minnesota. When you build a road, you have to mitigate a wetland.
That probably it's a
Depends on where
separate,
it is.
yeah, it's probably a
For
separate,
watershed.
probably a separate
Depends
bank
on the watershed.
besides.
Be in a separate area, I think, not necessarily.
It just has to be federal land?
It has to be within this
But if the
water.
current
We
site,
understand that there are credits available.
if the current plan moves forward, that would still involve the truck traffic on 61, which sounds like a hazard in terms of people turning off of Old Homer Road to go north.
Yeah, and we're
So,
working with MnDOT to improve that. They're part of the design process of what to do with turn lanes, northbound, southbound, in and out of the Homer site.
But in the past, you've used county roads, and that would be problematic. Because we are planning to redo Old Homer Road. You've had them backed up on County Road, is that 15? you've used 15 and everything else, so that would be problematic from a county perspective.
One of the proposals is to truck it up County Road 15 to the exit. That's what would be kind of, take it to a pit in the area. That would be a county road.
We currently have a proposal to um, have an amount to pay when you use the county roads for sand
That's-
thoroughfares.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
so,
Yeah.
because it does wear out the roads much faster.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're absolutely right.
But the safety is a
But
concern.
we have imposed that on the private sector.
Right. I mean, it's in the
It's in the-
ordinance.
It's in the, yeah, the road, the road tax and.
Okay, so,
By the ton tax.
yeah. Again, we're probably directing staff to create a letter, so narrow the scope here. Do we just want to, a resolution, I guess, yeah, resolution that we oppose?
Asked to list the concerns that we want addressed, which would be road safety and,
The whereases and
yeah,
resolution
and
form?
other options,
Yeah, we can.
those kinds of things, I don't know.
And are we saying we don't want any sand stored there, or we have a height that,
Well, I think the residents would live with 10 to 15 feet on the existing footprint. I don't know if they want to expand the footprint.
Sort of feel like since we have no authority,
We,
dictating the exact, I don't know if it matters that much, right? I mean, we have limited control over what ultimately happens.
they're taking notes, and this is
Yeah,
all
that's
public.
we'd be able to say that if it exceeds a certain height, we would, we don't support it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right. There you go, yeah.
So I'm just reading what I was provided before. Proposal requires a maximum pile height no more than 10 to 15 feet. And then, now I'm not sure, made whole within 120 days. I have to ask the author.
We're talking from the Homer community perspective, win-win, is no expansion from the existing site, stay on Homer West, no Homer East expansion, and keep the dredge pile height at the existing site no more than 10 to 15 feet max.
And does it need to be removed within a?
No, they could, if they were within the 15, we'd like it removed, but if it's within the 15 feet every year, we probably could live with it begrudgingly. Yes, we could live with it, but we wouldn't like it.
Okay, all right. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Do we
Okay.
know if the plantings and the trees actually do anything to mitigate the blowing of the sand? That's an issue too.
Can't plant a tree and cover it up with dirt because it kills a tree. I mean,
Well, I'm
Special
looking at
trees.
the pictures of the Trempolo site, and I'm wondering if there's sand blowing in that site.
mitigation of the airborne,
Yes.
that was somewhat addressed when we talked about the frac sand. The testing went on there.
That was one of the reasons.
Maybe our healthcare professional, Ms. Wicca, I need you to come to the mic if you have some professional guidance there.
Well, I just know that with even 10 to 15 feet, there will be trucks consistently and bulldozing consistently, 24 hours a day. We've already seen it. And it's just gonna be keep going and going and going, and we know how much dust we can get just by doing our gardens, you know? I mean,
Well, and it
just-
gets on the roads
just
and,
put-
yeah.
And it gets on the roads, and it's, anything when it's airborne, sand gets airborne, you know. Same as a virus gets airborne, then it goes, and you don't know where it's going.
Is that truck traffic seasonal in terms of only when they're dredging?
It's when they wanna get
or-
the sand out, and then the dump
Right.
trucks come in, and
moving
they're
the sand.
consistently running. I've seen them consistently running the dump trucks will run for about 10 to 11 hours I've seen. They start early in the morning and late at night, about 10 hours in the summer. And then the bulldozing will go 24 hours. I've seen lights in my house 24 hours. The guy's out there in lightning storms, and it's still going. So you're still getting that blowing, I mean, it's disrupting it.
And I'm sorry, but how often do the very long trains run down that track?
All the time.
Several times a day.
All the time.
Yeah.
And when they're line, when the,
I mean, they're miles long.
when they're
Crosses,
going,
yeah.
then the trucks are coming, and I'm serious.
Parking
I'm
on.
not lying, there's been 20 trucks down the road.
Yeah.
And you don't have enough room
Because
for
there's
them
30.
all safe. You don't own all the way down the road.
Is it, I mean, and they're huge, I mean, they're very long.
They can be very long.
Yeah, the oil tankers.
Yeah, I know in some cases, we've talked about limiting the truck traffic during school pickup and drop-off hours, but
I've seen that in the
that's,
summer, so it's.
yeah, that's still not really taking care of the whole problem.
And the
Yeah.
reason why I'm so worked up about this is because I almost had an incident.
Well, it's public safety in terms of, yeah, no, making it a safe turn on, yes.
And I just know there's not enough room for them to make it safe. There is not.
It's also visibility if you're, because if you can't see.
Well, not only that, but when the
Yeah.
trucks speed up, I mean, you're gonna need you're not gonna have enough room for that either. You're just not.
So how do we,
Well,
thank
those are
you.
the kinds of concerns
Right.
I
so-
had.
So how
but,
do we come up with a
I
list
don't
of?
know if we want them to address those or if those are the things that we could bring up in a meeting with leadership, and with the city, or,
What I can say about the turn lanes right now, is we're working with MinDOT on the design. It's their standards that we would be constructing to. We've been working with MinDOT office out of Rochester regarding truck stacking lanes and turn lanes, distances. That's part of the,
But it's always adding cost.
Yeah, and we'd have to see his worksheet.
over the
Giving
20-year
you
life of the
anything?
plan,
Yeah,
$10, $11.50 includes those improvements at the site over the life of the plan.
Okay, and that's a,
right, yeah.
and that's a, yeah, so we have to bring this back to the board.
Want to limit
Yeah, yeah. So a part of that, I'm sure, is a worksheet that you could provide us where all those costs are outlined. Some type of economic worksheet that comes up with all those numbers, because it's a little hard to figure that that's all built into there.
When is the
Attorney,
first meeting?
Attorney Sonneman.
I think I have the sense of where you want to be here, some of the list of concerns, and putting together a kind of general resolution with what I've heard here.
So could you create a draft for our first meeting in March, and we could
That would
look
probably
at
be, right, and then, because otherwise we could be here all night.
Yes.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
you want and what you don't want.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So is that a consensus that we would have staff work on a resolution with some of these highlighted things? We can discuss the draft at our March 10th meeting and then allow Commissioner Jacob to get back, and so the whole board could vote on it at the March
I would be
24th.
willing to make a motion to that effect.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion to advise staff to draft a resolution for discussion and then a final vote at a
We
later
wanna have
time.
a vote on you representing,
We could put that in the,
In the
I don't know, will that meeting with the, Mr. Toy happen quick, or are we on a 10-year plan?
Yeah, it wouldn't be with Mr. Toy. It would be
Okay.
with Colonel Jansen.
Okay.
St. Paul District Office, and maybe one or two other senior leaders up there.
How soon do we think?
We're looking at getting it in the council,
Oh, okay, so then maybe we
Before
should.
the end of the month.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
Okay.
all right. So do you want
and
to
is,
put,
does anybody, yeah,
okay,
okay, so I would include that in the motion. as
okay,
well.
and then maybe I take Karn along?
I would love to go with you.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay, all right. Are we all clear on what we're voting for? I don't know if I can repeat it all. Resolution's going to be crafted with points
A
of.
draft,
draft.
resolution for your review on March 10th for further discussion.
Yes. Commissioner Ward and Attorney Sonneman. All right.
Yeah.
And with the city, yes. Okay. All right. We had that motion made by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Kvesi. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. All right, that's approved. Okay. Any other business to come before the special meeting tonight?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Meyer to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Adjourn. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Let's see.